So much for checking out my show. Really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. Really appreciate all the support. It's actually early in the morning when I'm taping this. I'm in the airport, I'm on the move, actually working on a couple of new Nancy Guthrie stories. But in this episode, really interesting, I am digging into a couple of things. I'm talking to famed profiler, FBI profiler, Jim Clemente. First of all, he has a really detailed analysis of the blood spatter that was outside Nancy Guthrie's house. An analysis in a way that I haven't seen before, which it's in the Nancy Guthrie case. What are they thinking now? What sort of behavior are they exhibiting now, more than 2 months after the abduction? And how could that help people know what to look for in terms of tracking them down? Jim Clemente always just has such interesting analysis of these kinds of things because of his experience with the FBI as a profiler. I'm talking to him and getting into all of it in this episode of Brian Enton Investigates. Jim,
an 84-year-old woman taken from her own bed in the middle of the night. No broken windows, no kicked-in doors. No sign that anyone fought inside that house. Just a back door left propped open, like someone wanted a quiet way out. And a trail of blood on the front porch that was never supposed to be found. Her name is Nancy Guthrie. And before this episode ends, you are going to understand exactly what happened on that porch. Not what investigators speculated, not what rumors claimed. What the blood itself proved, frame by frame, to a man who spent his career hunting the worst offenders in America. Here is your first promise. A retired FBI profiler went through footage of that porch one image at a time. What he found tells us precisely where Nancy's body was, what was done to her, and how her attacker tried to erase every trace of what he did. We are breaking that analysis down completely in this episode. Here is your second promise. We are going to tell you what this suspect is doing right now, how he is behaving, what mistakes he has already made, and why Jim Clemente believes those mistakes will bring him down. Nancy Guthrie fought back that night. We know that now. The porch tells us, and the porch does not lie. If you want every update as this case develops, subscribe to Cold Case Corridor right now. We do not let cases go cold. But first, you need to understand what blood actually tells us, because most people have no idea. To read this scene, you have to understand how blood behaves, and once you do, what happened on that porch will never leave you. His name is Jim Clemente. Retired FBI profiler, behavioral analyst, a man who has spent decades reading crime scenes that other investigators couldn't crack. He went frame by frame through video footage taken outside Nancy Guthrie's front door. And what he found changes everything you thought you knew about that night. Here is what blood tells us. Forensic analysts categorize blood spatter into 3 types: low velocity, medium velocity, high velocity. Each one happens differently. Each one means something different. And on that porch, Clemente found medium velocity spatter. That matters more than you know. Medium velocity spatter can be created when somebody aspirates blood and then coughs it up, Clemente explained. This was not a cut, not a scrape. Nancy Guthrie coughed this blood out of her body onto that porch floor, but here is the detail that stops everything. Some of those droplets were hollow, rings with no fill, circles that held almost nothing at their center. There was actually air in that blood. There were bubbles, and the bubbles burst. That's why you see just the ring. Air inside blood. That only happens one way. The blood was aerated inside her body before it ever hit the ground. Clemente then did something no other analyst had done publicly. He calculated her position from the spatter pattern itself, the droplet size, the spread, the directionality of the oblong shapes, and he arrived at one conclusion. Her face, her mouth, was within a foot of the ground. She was on her knees, or hunched completely forward, face pointing almost straight down, on her own front porch, at her own front door. Then he identified a smear, blood that had already landed and been disturbed, a hand, a shoe, a body being moved. Someone interfered with that blood after it fell, and then the blood just stopped. That is Promise 1 delivered. Now the question you should be asking yourself, why did it stop? Because this was never random. This was planned. And the planning is exactly where this suspect begins to fall apart. Here is what investigators confirmed. Nothing was stolen from inside Nancy Guthrie's home. Not a single item. Every piece of jewelry, every valuable, untouched. This was never a burglary. This was never opportunistic. Someone came to that house that night for one reason only, to take Nancy Guthrie and walk out the front door with her. That is a directed, deliberate, targeted abduction of a specific 84-year-old woman. So why her? That question leads you to 5 things this suspect almost certainly knew before he ever stepped onto that porch. 1. He knew Nancy lived alone. 2. He knew she was physically vulnerable. 3. He knew about her daughter Savannah, NBC anchor, national face, perceived family wealth. 4. He knew how to enter that property without forcing a single lock. 5. He knew the layout well enough to prop a back door, walk through the house in the dark, and reach an 84-year-old woman's bedroom without waking the neighborhood. That is not luck. That is surveillance. Now, 2 ransom notes were sent to Arizona TV stations after the abduction. A Bitcoin account was attached to both. And here is where Promise 2 lands. Because what happened next inside that account tells you almost everything about this suspect's state of mind. On February 10th, someone deposited a small amount of money into that account, the Guthrie family, or the FBI. Moving carefully, testing contact. One message was attached. "We are ready to talk. Contact us." No reply ever came. Jim Clemente's interpretation of that silence is not ambiguous, and we will get to it. But first, consider what sending ransom notes to television stations actually signals. Real kidnappers avoid media attention completely. They want silence. They want secrecy. They want the exchange point to be invisible. This suspect invited cameras. That is either desperation or something far more unsettling. Why do you think he went silent the moment the money arrived? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every single one. Jim Clemente has spent decades reading offenders through their choices, and this suspect's choices left a very specific portrait, one detail at a time. Start with the backpack, a distinctive bag, purchased at Walmart, reflective straps that caught light in the dark, a kidnapper who chose the one item guaranteed to make him easier to identify on camera. Then the mask. Not a surgical mask, a breathable fabric mask, the kind that sheds fibers, loses hairs, and distributes DNA with every single step. These are mistakes a seasoned criminal would never make, Clemente said. And he is right. This was not a professional. This was someone who believed he had planned carefully and had not. Clemente's read on the blood spatter reinforces the single actor theory. One sequence of actions, one set of movements, one person who lost control of Nancy on that porch, which is exactly what would not happen if a second person had her secured. If there were 2 people, you would think one of them would have had complete control of her inside the house. Now, the Bitcoin silence. Here is the detail that lands like a stone. Clemente believes that when contact was made on February 10th and no reply came, Nancy was already gone. I think that perhaps she passed away in that time frame. He realized he no longer had what they wanted. Subscribe to Cold Case Corridor. When this case breaks, and it will, you need to be here. This suspect is watching every headline right now. He is changing his appearance. He may have sold or dumped his vehicle. He is doing everything Rex Hoyerman did after his crimes, creating distance, building alibis, praying the walls do not close. Jim Clemente believes one specific mistake brings this suspect down: DNA. A witness, or someone who knows him. Which do you think it is? For Savannah Guthrie, there is no algorithm, no case update that resolves anything, just silence where her mother used to be. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old, and she fought back, not metaphorically, not in spirit, physically, in the dark, on her own front porch, against an armed man who had already walked through her home and controlled her to the door. She went down. We know that. The blood tells us that. But she made him work for every inch. And in doing that, she left behind the evidence that may ultimately put him away. The hollow droplets, the aerated blood, the smear pattern, the moment the blood stopped. Every one of those details now lives permanently in the record of this case. He could not erase the porch, and the porch has not forgotten. What we do not know, where Nancy is, what happened after he carried her away, whether justice arrives before the trail disappears completely. The Bitcoin account is silent. The ransom notes are unanswered. And somewhere out there, a man is watching his own name not appear in the news yet, and calling that safety. Nancy fought back on that porch. What do you think investigators are missing? What do you want them to know? Tell me below. Subscribe to Dravex Crime. Share this with one person who needs to know Nancy's name. And come back, because this case is not over. She fought back. The porch remembers. And so do we.